And we are live, Energy Week podcast or live stream, I should say. Ryan Ray, the good doctor, Dr. Ellen Wald. We are a day late, and some of you who have been following the news might have put two together. We had to go get the ship out of the canal yesterday. And so
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
that's why we're a day late, and you can thank us through donations or whatever. We got it done.
Send hard hats. I actually wore this as I directed the excavator. You know, the
Yeah.
fulfillment of every 3-year-old child's dream.
So, anyways, I hope everyone appreciates our contribution to society, and we went and got it done.
I
No
think
one else.
people are actually depressed that the ship is out. I think people are actually depressed. I think it was like a thing, and the whole world could kind of come together to think about and produce internet memes about this ship. Everyone
There were
had
good
their
memes.
own way of connecting to this ship.
There were some good memes too.
So
Did you see the Godzilla King Kong one?
yeah.
Picking it up, and then they had the containers stacked up like a pyramid.
No.
Oh yeah, there were some good ones. There were some good
No, I
ones.
need to see that. I saw one with Putin. How the real one was Putin. I think he's on a horse or something,
Oh yeah,
towing. Did you see the Putin?
yeah,
Here it is.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know he's riding a bear, and he's tugging it out of it. Yeah.
Yes, I
So
saw I saw that. There was So the Godzilla Kong lifting the ship up was good, and then them stacking the crates up like a pyramid I thought was pretty funny. And so
yeah.
now we go back. So the question is, how many stories will be pinned in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times over the next 3 weeks talking about the impact of the ship and the blockage? Because it will have an impact. My Amazon packages were delayed a few days, it felt like. So
I know. Seriously, there were some people who were talking about the toilet paper shortage. It might cause a toilet paper shortage. So if you
yes, I saw
can't
that.
find your preferred brand and ply of toilet paper in the store, then it could be the ship's fault.
Yeah. So does the insurance company? Nas pointed this out quite early that the insurance company could pay for all this stuff. I wonder, So real quick, I told this story before, but I'll kind of rehash it. When we were looking to import some stuff from South Africa, they had these weird exemption clauses in the insurance, and I want to say, I had to ask Nate, but I think it was like if a Russian submarine sinks the ship, it's not covered. And I remember thinking, okay, what are the odds of a Russian sub sinking it? But also the fact that you won't cover that, maybe the odds are greater than I think they are. And it had some weird clauses like if the ship sank or by a hurricane, in port and out of port, it had these weird clauses in there. So I wonder if they will be able to get around some kind of because of some kind of weird act of God or power. But I will say this.
Well, usually I don't know very much about insurance, but like contracts usually have some sort of like this is except for like acts of God. I don't know if this counts as an act of God though. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what counts as an act of God.
So I'm just going to say this, and someone the other day said, "Don't give me ideas," and I think I'm okay here. But we hear a lot about the war on terror and the threat of terrorism, and we've talked about the Suez Canal before. But now everyone got to see how small it is. I mean, it's big, but relatively speaking, how easy it would be potentially to go in there and to sink a few ships via terrorism. Does it not make us rethink maybe that terrorism globally? Of course, it's simple that snap tomorrow and everyone will mock me. But does it not make you rethink, like, okay, maybe this terrorism stuff isn't as widespread and pervasive and as big a society as we're led to believe? Because this would talk about a choke point. Like this would seem to be quite easy to take care of this. We see ships that are raided all the time. They're commandeered, but taken over by pirates, held hostage. I don't know. To me, this was kind of a reminder that I don't know. Maybe some of this is a little bit.
They're called choke points for a reason.
Yeah, I think you.
When I used to teach, international relations, history of international relations. We did cover this. I actually wrote. Well, we covered some of this stuff, but like one of the first things that we did in the whole class, it was like international relations of the 20th century. So we talked about like the British Empire, and especially when they had colonies all over the place. And so their navy was very, very important because that's how they maintained access to India and all of their other colonies in Australia and all these other areas that were very important to them for for trade. And the Suez Canal was, I mean, there were various choke points all over the place. And I actually have this great map that I have in my slides, which I don't have handy. I probably find it before the end of the podcast. If you want to show it, but it's this great map that shows like all of the colonies and all of the coaling stations, and you can also see all the choke points on there. And the Suez Canal is obviously a huge one, but there are others like the Straits of Gibraltar was one, and I think and also today, I mean, we can kind of reconceptualize because there's no more British Empire, but in terms of like global trade, the Suez Canal is a choke point, and there are other important choke points like the South China Sea is a big choke point. And not to like toot my own horn or anything, but if you're interested in this, that's what I'm writing about for my column for Worm newsletter and hot take of the day. So
which will be out in your inbox when you wake up in the morning.
Yeah, so sign up now.
Oh, there you go, and it's free. We're giving it away. We're just giving it away. So there you go. Okay, so we have a few things to get to. Let's start off here with from Argus. Biden to advance well plugging initiative. President Joe Biden's administration is pitching potential cooperation with the U.S. oil and gas industry to plug abandoned orphan wells across federal and private lands to prevent methane leaks and create energy sector jobs. And according to this report, they have 100 wellheads that are not capped leaking methane.
100 wellheads. They're going to employ all the unemployed people because from the oil and gas industry when they just decide to like turn it off, right? I mean, come on. I think I tweeted about this last week, and some people were like, "That's not the whole plan. That's not the whole plan." And then other people were like, "This is like the dumbest thing. It will take us like 5 minutes to do this, and you can't employ all these people. You have to like have specialized knowledge to do this. It's not just like, oh, let's transfer these guys over here."
Right. Well, you have like the general jobs, like the guy driving the truck, the guy, the gopher, go get this, go get that. You have those jobs that would transfer. But yes, I would never want to be involved with plugging a well because it would probably not get plugged properly. I'd just like pour concrete in it. Well, like it is a specialized job. It's something that you have to take. What's interesting is it says in 2018, 1,700 of these wells were on federal lands. And so, and that's the last number I see in the article, 1,700, and Biden is wanting to plug 100,000 wells, and so that means that he's wanting to plug, wells that aren't on federal lands too.
He will pay for Texas to plug its wells.
I mean.
Do we really think they have 100,000 wellheads that are not capped?
Well, okay. According to the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, if I'm reading this right, there was 57,000 in 2018. So we've doubled that amount basically in 2 years, less, more or less. So when the number came out, I don't know. So it sounds like one of those things. I do agree that to your point, which is, and then the other thing is, just real quick, is that geothermal is kind of getting a look in these old abandoned wells. And so I don't know, maybe someone who listens will know the answer, but if you start plugging these wells and you want to use it for geothermal, can you go back and do that, or do you have to drill a separate well? That would be something I'm not familiar with, but I know that there's a big push right now. You're starting to see geothermal for these old abandoned wells because you have the heat right there, right? And so if you plug them, you couldn't do that potentially. I don't know, but it would seem to be weird.
Well, that would be really interesting because their geothermal is a significant source of energy for, certain countries. And so, that would be great if we could increase our geothermal energy profile.
And also, this is not a renewable job. So, think about this.
Once it's plugged, it's plugged.
It's plugged, right? I know you're drilling more wells and eventually those would be plugged, but it's not as simple as saying, well drilled or well plugged is going to happen. So to your point, you could theoretically have a big surge, plug them all, and then you just lay a bunch of people off. So I think this is more talk than anything else. It costs $19,000 to cap a well.
How much?
19,000.
Wow. Yeah, someone wrote some of this. These are some of the comments I got when I tweeted about this. Someone called the Drill Down Brothers on a rival podcast. Is it okay to mention that?
Yeah.
They examined this proposal and they said it's ridiculous. The emissions from capping the wells are actually much greater from the current leaks. So it will produce more emissions to actually cap it. And then this person said,
the Drill Down Brothers. Yeah, real quick. That is a good show. If you like the kind of technical aspects of like oil and gas stuff, they have a good show. It's called the Drill Down. Yeah, it's a good podcast.
Then another person said that if the cap translates to plug and abandon, pipe fitters would be of little use. This is not a task for the inexperienced.
Right.
So thank you to all those who responded to that tweet with more and valuable information.
Also, scrolling through your Twitter feed, I like this. This tweet from Vivian Yee. I can confirm the Suez Canal ship is large.
She was like posting like basis. She was like there, and then there's another one like a couple of days where she's like, "I can confirm it is moving." And there's like a video of it moving. It is large. It's what, like 200,000 tons.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's so. If I understood what Anas was saying yesterday, is that when the ship beached, for lack of a better term, it went up on the sand. And so, what do you call it? Got stuck? I don't know. Lodged, whatever the term is here.
Beached.
Beached. When the ship beached, it went up into the sand. So so it was kind of unbalanced. So as you were digging out around it, the ship just was sinking into the sand more until eventually it floated. So I don't know. It was, anyways. Okay. The Dallas Fed Energy Survey: oil and gas activity expands strongly. Outlook improves dramatically. Two big buzzwords there: strongly and dramatically.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, I have a lot of thoughts. I have so many thoughts on this. I wrote a whole column in investing.com about the Dallas Fed survey, mostly about the results of these special questions. So click on that tab, everyone who's following along at home. So basically, these are data collected. They send these questionnaires to oil and gas. I think they were mostly E&P companies and some services companies. This is what they asked the E&P firms. In the top 2 areas in which your firm is active, what West Texas Intermediate oil price does your firm need to cover operating costs for existing wells? And then the next question they asked is, in the top 2 areas for which your firm is active, what WTI oil price does your firm need to profitably drill a new well? Mm-hmm. These answers are all very interesting, and they rank them by area. Mm-hmm. And they're all, like, WTI is, other than, except for I think the other category where they say it would be $58 a barrel to profitably drill a new well, they're all above. Like WTI is well above this, which begs the question: why are we not drilling more?
So
and that is interesting, and you can I think you can find out in the comment section. But let's discuss why first.
Okay, the comment section of the article?
Let's talk about what do we think the answers are before we see what the survey respondents say.
I'm going back to my theory about the monthly OPEC meetings and putting pressure on there. I asked Anas about that. And he said that he had heard, this is on the Texas Oil and Gas podcast yesterday, that prior to the monthly meetings, that he had heard that C-suites in the U.S. oil and gas sector were already concerned after what happened with the fixed price war, whatever you call it last year. They're already concerned about that happening again. And then when you take that couple with the monthly meetings, there's so much pressure on them to not over drill that they are just, I don't want to say petrified, but they are just scared that the monthly OPEC meetings, especially after we saw in March of last year, that there's just so much pressure on them that they're very reluctant to get out in front of their skis. So if we go to the question section, so it's interesting because these are some quotes, okay, and some of them, one of them actually mentioned what you say. It says, while the price increases have been welcome news, OPEC Plus is the sword of Damocles. If the U.S. operators raise capital expenditures, OPEC Plus will open its taps and flood the market. There's a tense detente currently. So that kind of speaks to your point where OPEC's constantly meeting. They have got this opportunity every month to open the taps. And so the producers are like, we can't drill more because OPEC will just flood the market. So I think that speaks to your point. But what I got from this, I'll tell you, which I think is very interesting, because
we've been having this narrative for a while that the Biden administration is not impacting gasoline, like is not responsible right now for rising gasoline prices. Like everyone wants to say, oh, look at how much gas has gone up under Biden so far, and he's to blame. And then everyone pushes back and says, well, he hasn't actually done anything yet to raise prices. This is just like what's happening. This would be happening anyway, blah, 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 blah. Well, I think that, and I would argue that actually what this survey shows is that the Biden administration is actually causing energy prices to rise in the US. Because if you look at some of these comments, a lot of them specifically name the uncertainty from the Biden administration over drilling regulations as a reason why they don't want to put in money to expand drilling operations. Like the Biden administration's moratorium on granting new oil and gas leases on federal lands administered by the BLM, as well as temporary ban on issuance of new permits, will necessitate a change of focus in our exploration plans. The erratic political scene in our national government today and its influence in the economy is making any meaningful assessment of near and long-term market conditions impossible. As a consequence, capital planning is a fool's game at best. Then they like. And there are other ones like New Mexico. Political issues are putting a damper on their outlook for their industry in New Mexico. Government regulations and intervention in oil and gas on federal leases have created political risk and pose a long-term threat. And it goes on. There are other things like some people are like, oh, well, we're currently doing, we're doing workovers that we put off, or we've been selling or plugging low production.
Well, here's one. It says, it's great to see improved oil prices. The higher prices feel fragile and have not really impacted my revenue yet. And so here's a comment. In a couple of months or beginning of 2022, all can open taps, but investments are way down for years. So...
And that's absolutely true, and that's true especially in large, for large projects, especially when you're looking at like say big offshore projects. That's absolutely true. I think the only firm that hasn't cut capex is ADNOC.
Yeah,
or hasn't cut it significantly. I mean, even Saudi Aramco has cut its capex significantly for what it usually does. So I think that's true, but it's very what I think this shows is that if, say, this was the Trump administration, or if Trump had won and we had a different president and his outlook was like, we're going to support U.S. drilling, and oil prices were still up, then there wouldn't be this hesitancy to invest money to produce more, because why are you going to shell out to drill new wells if suddenly they're like, you're not going to be able to, or things like that. So I think that the Biden administration is having a dampening effect on expansion in the oil industry. And so we would have that, I think we would see more of a reaction to the higher WTI than we have. And so if oil production went up, then we'd see prices come down. So I think it's kind of like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I think that perhaps we need to reassess this and say, look, even though no one has yet been denied a permit to drill on federal land yet, the fact that they have this moratorium is making people not expand and not want to shell out money to do this.
Well, and you haven't seen a lot of talk, or at least I haven't, maybe someone has, they could point me to it, about what's going on at the state level in New Mexico in the BLM. So you have the BLM, which is federal entities. The state level in New Mexico is talking about, kind of regulate oil and gas. If Trump were in, I think you'd be seeing people talk about what could the state do on the federal land, because Trump would be having these policies, but you're not seeing that. The other thing is that our boys over in Iran are getting, I don't know if you saw about the 25-year that they struck with China, they're getting a kind of I don't want to say free pass. So I don't think that's Biden. I think that was going to happen regardless. And so you're seeing that pressure. So here we go. A couple of questions here we'll get to. Also, do you want to open the taps in U.S. if you need heavy oil from Russia or Venezuela? I don't know if Venezuela is going to come back anytime soon, but Russia is they're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, and I think that it doesn't really matter, because if WTI is, WTI is 60 or above 60, then these firms know that they can make money. I mean, they basically reported that they can profitably drill wells at that price, but they're not because they're scared about what's about their long-term future. And that in turn, I think, is keeping oil prices higher.
Yeah, so just to be clear, in the Permian, it says existing wells for the Delaware Basin 26, the Midland Basin 27, and the other rest of the Permian 33, and then for new wells in the Delaware 49,
Yeah.
And then for the rest of the Permian, for the Midland Basin, the Permian 46, and for the rest of the Permian 53, which obviously, as you pointed out, we are well above.
The other interesting thing you should look at is price forecasts. Look at where they think the price of oil is going to be and compare this to, say, like what JP Morgan thinks the price of oil is. If you click on the price forecast tab, what do you expect the WTI crude oil price to be at the end of 2021? Most people think it's going to be in the $50 to $62 range. Some people think it might hit 67. That's not great compared to what other people have forecast. So I would say that the E&P firms have a much more sober look at this. But also, the other thing we have to remember, and this kind of ties into the question which a listener has asked about opening taps, do you need other qualities to make that work? And one of the things that we found in previous years is that the higher the price of oil, the more services cost and more all of those things, the cost of those things goes up. So yeah, it's not just the cost of drilling the well, but there are all sorts of other things that contribute, like the services costs and also the like the cost of employing people and all of that, especially after you've laid them off. It's not insignificant. So yeah, there are more costs there, but I just think it's interesting to see that these E&P firms aren't as bullish on oil prices as other analysts, and that could also explain why they're not so excited about drilling more.
Yeah, if you want to point out that the U.S. foreign policy is a little bit hypocritical, then you're on the right
Join the club.
In the comment here is U.S. imports oil from Russia but blocks the Nord Stream, and he's like, that's they don't really
Come on.
Yeah, they don't really care about that. Ellen, when do you question quality versus quantity? That is the main issue. This is from Cyril, I believe.
I mean, it depends. I mean, it's obviously not all oil is the same, but people will still buy light oil, and light oil has become is used more than it used to be. So I think we're in a time where if U.S. producers were producing more oil, they could sell it. I think that they're not, and for a variety of interesting reasons, and that in and of itself is helping keep the price up. It'll be interesting to see how long this goes, right? If OPEC rolls over again this week, which they may, it looks like they're going towards that, then we could see the price go higher. And maybe that'll be too great. Maybe they will resist the temptation then.
Well, okay, if OPEC looks like they're going to continue the cuts, then based upon the last two times, that means they're not going to continue the cuts because they've kind of done the opposite of what we've expected them to do. So maybe they'll add it, but that would be, so this would go on the market for May or June, if they changed it.
I think it's April.
June, right?
Yeah. I think they're deciding for May.
Okay, for May. Okay.
I think they're deciding for May.
If they don't do
yeah.
May, then the next time they would be able to add would be for July, right? Because it'd be for May and June.
I think that's what they're talking about, but who knows if that's what they're actually going to decide.
I mean, but that's how they've done before. It's been 2 months at a time, right? And so
not always. They didn't. Last time it was 1 month.
Were there? I thought they were meeting monthly, but they were making 2 months worth of decisions.
Not always.
No? Okay.
No, like 2 times ago, I think they made a 2-month thing, and so we had like 1 month's respite, and now it's like every month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they're just doing for May, then that might work, because by June, I would imagine if you're the Saudis and you have to expect that demand is going to pick up in May and June, right? People getting
well, you should even just
travel, right?
Well, yeah, but apparently the news today is that OPEC was looking at OPEC Plus was looking at OPEC's the the economists that OPEC employs to make price forecasts or demand forecasts, and they're like, we think you're too optimistic. Please revise.
Yeah, it's really weird because right now you kind of have this narrative that is it's in this. We got two comments coming in here. We'll respond to, but you feel like we should be opening up, but then as one person's about to say that we might be going back down to lockdowns in Europe. Is China still buying crude in the volumes they have been recently? What's the plan for the stockpile? To my knowledge, they slowed down buying. Ellen might have different information on that. That's what I've heard.
It seemed like they'd slow down a bit, but we do know that they're buying even more Iranian oil, which is kind of under the
right.
What's the plan for the stockpile? I mean, I think China's plan for the stockpile is the same as it always is. Price gets too high.
Mm-hmm. Well, did you see that for most of 2020, China's refineries processed more crude oil than U.S. refineries? Did you see that article?
I did just see that. That's very interesting. Not surprising though, because
we weren't going anywhere. Demand is. This is one more. We'll move on here. So yes, I think that that China is going to try to use their oil for either in country or to put back on the market to keep prices low, however they see fit. Demand is going to be hit. UE's locking down again. Third wave.
I thought they were on their fourth wave. I'm so confused. Also, don't we start counting over? Don't we start counting the waves over again when we hit a new year?
I don't know, but
we count forever, like it'll be 2024 and we'll be like, this is the 16th wave of COVID.
Okay, I'll say this: if the Saudis and OPEC comes out and says we're keeping our cuts, we're keeping everything like it is, I would believe that a lockdown is what they're being told is going to happen, like right? Because you're talking about like the most demand for travel and stuff is coming up the next two to 3 months roughly. So if they come out and extend it all the way through June, now if they just extend through May, it's one thing, but they extend it through June, you'd have to presume that they're hearing that things are going to go back under lockdown again. So,
good question.
I don't know. And let's see one more. Are the buys from Venezuela and Iran, etc., a pure FU to the U.S. or strategic otherwise? China does what China does. And like that's what they do. Now they will capitulate to the U.S. at time to time, but they're not like they view their policy as in their best interest, and they argue that we do as well.
Yeah, I think the buys from Iran and Venezuela are a bunch of things. First of all, it's price, because you buying that much oil, like why not see what you want to get it cheaper, and if Iran will sell it to you cheaper and take your yuan for it and then spend it buying stuff from your country, then like that's a good deal for you. So I think it's both. It's a good deal for China because of the price. It's also helps further their economic and trade goals with Iran, which is to basically, I mean, they basically have free reign there in terms of like what they can supply Iran with. Now the Iranians don't always like what they get from China, but like if you're under sanctions, you don't have much choice. So they basically have a captive market, and they like it that way. So it's that. And then it's also, I think that to make a point of, well, we don't have to abide by your by the U.S. sanctions. Like why it is in some ways, I think, deliberate to say, hey, you can put these sanctions, but we don't have to follow them. We're our own sovereign nation, and we don't have to listen to you. And so I do think that that's definitely part of it. But definitely, if Iranian oil was more expensive than U.S. oil, I don't think that they would be buying as much of it. So it's both price and,
Yeah, I think
turn the knife.
I think from the American perspective, we always look at it as they're trying to stick it to us. And I think so they are aware how we will view each thing that they do, right? So like when they do a deal with Iran, they know it's going to get the current administration mad. But to your point, it makes more sense for them to do that deal from their perspective. So I don't think that's necessarily that they're concerned with that. It's always hard to judge how much it is despite the U.S. When they're doing something in North Korea, obviously, I think that's pretty blatant. Like they're really trying to kind of rattle the cage over here. But I'm not so sure the Iran that they're doing deals with all over the Middle East. It's not just
Mm.
Iran.
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, but I don't think it's like I think if you look at like what's happening with India, where India is like, we want to diversify our oil sources. We don't want to buy so much Saudi oil because I mean, look at what the Saudi oil minister said about India at the last OPEC meeting. He's like, someone asked a question, well, what do you say to India that said like, please produce more oil, it's too expensive. And he was basically like, we sold you a lot of cheap oil early in the year, so use that from your stockpiles. And India got pissed. I mean, they were really upset about that, and that's a deliberate, like they're deliberately looking to source from elsewhere because of that. I don't think China, I mean, you probably know better about China than I do, but I don't think China operates in like that kind of pettiness, but it's more like we need to maintain this position that we're operating in our sovereign interests and the U.S. sanctions do not apply to us. So we're going to buy that oil.
And China likes dealing with countries who won't call them out. So is Iran going to call out China for human rights violations?
No, they will call them out for like broken subway cars that they said them.
But, you know, like there was a report, I think I tweeted this out today, or it's supposed to be tweeted out anyways, and it was the Human Rights Council or someone, and they were stunned that African leaders wouldn't criticize what's going on in Xinjiang with the Uyghurs. And it's like, you're stunned? Have you read the deals that China, like how China operates with its lending terms? Like, no, you shouldn't be stunned. You should be pointing out that this is part of the problem with countries that do business. And, you know, that's what they try to do with Australia. You know, they try to tell Australia that, you know, if you're going to work with us, you can't criticize us in your papers and stuff like that. And the Aussies were like, screw you guys. So the Iranians are like, sure, whatever. What do we care? Like,
it's not like they can criticize like the Iranian government in their papers.
Yeah, I mean, they like, you know, these regimes like to live in a, you know, whatever you say about Trump or Biden, we at least have a press that is able to criticize them.
Able. So, they don't always, but they are able.
They're able. I said able. I didn't say they did. Yes. They're able to. Yeah. So anyways, okay, let's move on. Exxon Chevron deal could help kill fossil fuels. This seems a little dramatic. Seems a little dramatic.
Yeah. So let's just remember this is an op-ed.
Yeah, it is an op-ed, you're saying?
Yeah, and also, can we weigh in? What are our thoughts on Chexon as the new name for the yeah? So I don't know if people are aware of this because this may only be a thing for people who are like really into books and I don't know. But so apparently in like books and maybe in TV shows, when you ship two characters, that means like you want these two characters to like be together, you're supposed to like combine their names into one in some way that connotes that you ship them. And so if you're shipping Chevron and Exxon together, then I guess is your ship name Chexon or is it
Evron?
Mobvon or Xron. Are we a Chexon or an Xveron?
I don't know. That's sure. Let's go Chex.
Yeah, just check. Well, but that's a cereal.
That's true.
That's a cereal.
That's true. I don't know.
Anyway, weigh in with your preferred name, or would it just be ExxonMobil Chevron or Chevron ExxonMobil?
Is it going to happen? You think?
No. I don't think it's going to happen. Well, so their argument seems to be that basically that regulators, okay, so in order for ExxonMobil and Chevron to merge, they would obviously need the like regulatory approval because that's like a lot of competition disappearing right there. Those are like the two biggest American oil companies. So they're basically saying that, well, when they do merge, which they're most probably not going to, but they're kind of taking the stance that like, yes, it's going to happen. The regulator should say, okay, we'll let you do this, but you have to commit to spending like as much money on non-fossil energy as you do on fossil energy or something like that, which seems to me like a totally ridiculous thing that has absolutely no chance of ever happening. Yeah, he says regulators could choose to okay a Chexon or Xveron merger, but throw in some choice conditions to help fortify a cleaner fuel market for Americans. I mean, don't you think that Exxon and Chevron in that could be like, no thanks. They'd just like walk away. And
I don't know. I mean, it depends. If Exxon, so I'll give you an example.
They want them to invest dollar for dollar.
Okay, so let me give you an example.
Anyway.
I listened to about 15 minutes or 10 minutes. I don't remember what it was. 15 minutes of the tech companies with the in front of Congress last week, and about this threw up. It was craziness. But you listen to what Zuckerberg said, and they asked him about regulation, and he said, "Well, no, I don't think that the smaller platforms should be regulated, but the bigger platforms should be." And you hear that, and you go, "Oh well, look at Mark. He's a good guy." What he's actually doing is creating a barrier of entry that prevents anyone from ever achieving their status. So it sounds like he's really trying to do out. So
that's genius, actually.
Oh, it's genius. It's brilliant. And that's yes, it's brilliant because like, oh well, we will take guys, we'll be regulated. These smaller guys can do their thing. And oh, by the way, it's so tough they'll never get there. So Chexon, it sounds like a Russian, like an Eastern Russian bloc country. Czechoslovakia or something.
It does. Oh my god.
So Chexon here.
It will be run by Vladimir Putin.
If you had a Chexon, though, that's probably what they would do. Like, okay, listen, to be our size or to do this or to do that, whatever, you have to commit dollar for dollar. And so then they've created a barrier of entry that other companies can never aspire to be. So I can see them doing something like that to where they just create a new barrier of entry and they've weeded at the competition, and so the competition can ever aspire to be so high, and they just suck them up. So
can I just read the last two lines of this piece? It says, okay, I'm going to read the last paragraph. As the power structure shifts, a strong oil market is still needed to help in the transition. So an American state-sponsored oil company is no longer unthinkable, and progressives have argued for industrial policies akin to China. If Chevron's chief executive, Mike Wirth, could something himself to the idea of allowing the U.S. government to take a strong guiding hand, regulators to acquiesce to a deal between it and Exxon. I think there are a lot of typos in this. Yeah.
The idea.
Yeah. The key is acknowledging that a deal between the two would, in fact, help fossil fuels wind down. So we're going to let you merge with the knowledge that it will then kill your company and kill all the value for your shareholders. I mean, and then it will be a state-sponsored oil company?
Well, here's the key here. This is Breaking Views on Reuters. And Reuters Breaking Views is the world-leading source of agenda-setting financial insight.
Oh, so this is supposed to set the agenda.
So what could the agenda be here? I wonder.
Ooh, I wonder. Anyway.
Communist.
You know what that would mean?
What?
That we're basically ceding energy supremacy to the Middle East and Russia.
Yeah. So
who produce,
I'm just glad just to read it in writing that we're openly admitting that we're wanting to be like China. I'm just glad to see that by the agenda setters.
The agenda setters, yes. We should be like China.
We're wanting to have a state-owned company like China. The level of stupidity is hard to fathom. Okay, speaking of China, up next, PetroChina expects its carbon emissions to peak around 2025. Fact checkers.
Are they planning to dissolve themselves?
Yeah, Ryan Ray, the fact checker, deems that as false.
Yeah, fake news.
Oh, hey, I'll tell you what. I've got to look into this. I'm curious if you heard about this. There is a company out there. This was from I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this guy is doing a documentary, and the whole documentary is on cutting edge ideas that are trying to make the world a better place. And so he's not necessarily saying that they're right or wrong, but the point he's making is that here are these ideas and regulators are preventing them from getting to market. And so one of them was like a 3D printed heart or organ, and these people have developed technology. And I'm not saying these things work or not, but his whole documentary is exploring these ideas. And one of them was they create these bins, and I'm gonna say bin, that absorb carbon. And so you can stack these bins, you dunk them in water, and you set them out and absorb carbon. And his point is that if you want to do carbon reduction, assuming these things work, you could just take these bins and put them like in the desert or wherever, and then the carbon emissions would start to go to these bins and be captured, right? And then if you said, "Oh, we're sucking up too much carbon," you just go put the bins away. And so,
what do you do with the bins? Do they get full?
I think it has to do with the water. You put them back in the water and you cleanse them. I'm not sure exactly how the technology works, but the concept wasn't to have like some big vacuum cleaner, sucking carbon out of the air, right? Or putting carbon deep beneath the earth. That's really expensive. These are supposed to be very cost effective, but the regulatory bodies are preventing these things from being tried out. It's like, well, that's a shocker. So I'm gonna look into that because that would be quite interesting to see if I'm not saying it works or doesn't work, but that you talk about carbon capture, carbon reduction technology, something that you can put out, you can take back in. That would make more sense if you really want to reduce it, because if we're not careful, we're just going to get rid of carbon and go, oh, wow, we got rid of too much carbon. And I'm waiting for the headline that goes, well, we've wasted too much carbon. If only we would have saved it and used it for this, because that's coming.
Interestingly, so apparently PetroChina aims to supply more zero carbon products than the fossil fuel it consumes. What is a zero carbon product? I'm wondering, is this like something that's what?
Those chips you made. Did you make zero?
Those were net zero.
Net zero.
Which meant that I think so. Or no, they were like fossil. But see, they weren't zero carbon because I still bake them in an oven that runs on electricity, and most electricity in my area comes from natural gas powered power plants. I didn't like sit them out in the sun to bake. So, okay, if I raised a chicken off of the grass, I did not feed it any grain, okay, or wheat or anything like that, and then I got an egg from that chicken, and then I cracked it on my really hot car and cooked it in the sun, I guess you could would that be a zero carbon product?
Well, they're saying spending on greener products, including wind, solar, and geothermal and hydrogen power. Okay, well, those aren't zero carbon.
Exactly. You still have to use fossil fuels to produce these products.
Right.
At every single step of the way. It's like, you know how like the FDA has like an actual definition for organic. Like you cannot put organic on your food unless you actually like adhere to this thing. That's why everyone uses natural. It's really like it's natural because that's a totally meaningless term.
It's like famous,
it means nothing.
Like Tom's Famous Tacos or Bob's Famous Steak. You can say that, right?
But you can't say organic or gluten-free unless it's like actually that. So zero carbon, like natural.
I think you have a big problem here because you have the people who are really serious about this stuff and they're trying to figure out solutions. And you kind of have, the average Joe reading stuff. And, if you read like Bill Gates talking about why he had to fly to Davos in his private jet, it was really important because he couldn't have Zoomed it, obviously, Ellen. Bill has to be in the room.
Except his computer was also produced using carbon, and his internet runs on electricity that is, if not a carbon-based form of electricity, then is generated using things that were made by burning fossil fuels that emit carbon dioxide.
That's the thing about his book is he talks about, how he offsets his carbon. So he's not, and so he's reducing his sum, but he's offsetting his carbon. It's like, bro, you've got enough money that you could probably live as close to carbon neutral as anyone. Why do you need to offset it? Let's get real here. And so I think you get a lot of play on words and word swaps and meanings and definitions that are vague. And so, because if you're going to build a wind turbine, that's not
zero carbon. You know that you need to lubricate it using, guess what?
Water.
Oil. Water. Yeah. Yeah.
Water would work. If you could figure out what to use wax. If you could figure out what to use water as a lubricant for wind turbines, then you get closer. Closer, but you can't. Okay, let's see here. Only got a few more minutes. Real quick.
What's your
least surprising headline ever: vehicle mile tax could be on the table in infrastructure talks. How is she going to pay for them roads with all them EVs, Ellen?
Yeah, I got a lot of pushback when I wrote about that because I was like, give me a break. Like, how can you have a vehicle mile tax? Okay, how are you going to measure that? You're going to track it using like Easy Pass things? Well, guess what? A lot of people don't have them, and you're not going to install RFIDs on every single road in this country. Like, wow, talk about it.
They will. They'll print the money and try.
And like, it's just, and then what are you going to do? Have people self-report it on their income tax, and then what? They're going to send the IRS people out after you if you lie, if they suspect you lie. I mean, come on, people are going to be like, and then what, the IRS guy is going to come and be like, let me in your car to check your mileage. You could say no,
I tell you how to
because
do
that's
it.
an illegal search and seizure.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
come on, there's no, you just can't.
I tell you how to do it. I tell you how to do it. Oil changes
But
and inspection stickers.
then they charge you a tax every time you get your oil changed. But then
or an inspection sticker. So like in Texas, I think.
But Florida, we don't have to get inspections.
That'll change. I mean, it's something as simple as that. That's how they'll do it. They'll do it like.
But they can't. Apparently, there was some case that was like litigated about this, about like trucking or something. They can't. So we don't have. They have to accept that Florida, like I can drive my car out of Florida, even though, and it's okay for me to drive in every other state, even though even though there's no emissions, there's no inspections in Florida.
Texas. Everyone talk about Texas. It's not nearly as free as Florida is.
I remember when I moved to Georgia, I was like, yeah, Georgia, it's south. It's gonna be so. Oh my God, Georgia was worse than Massachusetts.
Yeah, Texas has got some stupid stuff too, especially around sales tax. But I would bet. Okay, somebody's think through this. They control the interstates, right?
Well, only the interstate. Yeah,
right.
Only so federal roads.
To get on an interstate, you have to have an inspection sticker. And when you get an inspection,
I have a feeling that they can't do that because of the full faith and credit. They have to honor, like,
they're banned.
If Florida gives you a license,
without a mask.
If Florida says it's okay, like if Florida gives you an inspection, like we get like a sticker that we have to show that we have registration and insurance, and then they send you. If Florida says it's okay, they have to admit admit your car under full faith and credit clause of the Constitution. So I don't know. It's a really interesting legal question. I don't think that they could, and I think that's actually already been litigated under interstate trucking. But I'm not a legal.
Because to me, that would be the simple workarounds. Would be something like that. Whereas you got to get an inspection sticker, or you got your oil change, and the inspection sticker would make sense because you could change your own oil. But even then, they could ask you to turn it in. But it's quite scary because if you're turning in your vehicle as a tax write-off for miles accrued because of business, but then you didn't turn it in for that. So there's ways they will.
Okay, yeah, they could get you for that. But like personal anecdote. So way back when I drove a 1987 Toyota Camry, it leaked oil like nobody's business, and so I don't think I ever got the oil changes. I just used to buy motor oil and stick it into the car. Constantly. I think I drove around with motor oil. I didn't drive all that far in that car because it's kind of old, but it just.
There you go. They could just charge a tax on the oil.
On the motor oil, which would annoy me because I use it for my lawnmower.
But that would be it, right? So they say, okay, well, every 5,000 miles you got to pay for oil. Here's how we do it: let's charge a tax for the oil.
Then it's not a mileage tax. Then it's a tax on your oil. What?
Well, listen,
no, it's interesting. So that
they're experts at taking your money.
That's true.
They're experts.
But aren't we all experts at hiding our money from them?
I'm not. I pay every dollar I've ever owned.
That's true.
Oh, by the way, I saw that mask and hand sanitizers are write-offs. I wear, other than this podcast, I wear a mask all the time. I sleep in one. I have hand sanitizer. I'm masked up 24/7.
You actually bathe in hand sanitizer.
Yes, obviously.
Who knew? I didn't.
Mask on. With the mask on. So if the IRS is watching, those 100,000 masks I used last year are all legitimate. So that's just for me. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I triple mask before Fauci recommended one mask. So I've been serious.
Yeah, you were triple masking.
Oh yeah, I was dead serious about this stuff. So
why didn't they just tell Americans that if they really wanted Americans to wear masks, why didn't they be like, it's a tax write-off?
Yeah, they're so stupid. Yes, obviously, if you'd have come out last year and said mask or tax write-off, I'd have bought boxes of them. I never would have wore one, but I'd have bought boxes of them suckers.
I think donate it. Donate them and then get them right. Yeah. Sorry, people listening to this should not take any of this as tax advice. We are not licensed accountants. This is not a show about taxes.
Entertainment purposes only. Do your own research. Okay, Ms. Wald. I know we're up against the clock. It was a fun show today, though. Okay.
But apparently, people should know that Pete Buttigieg had to come out on CNN and say that this vehicle mileage tax is not actually part of the infrastructure legislation package. This was
Not
just
yet.
his musings.
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. I mean,
Yeah.
this real quick. Why are we paying taxes when we can print money at will? I wrote about this in the War Room last year. I know people talk about it now. Seriously, people ask this question: if they can just print the money, why are we paying taxes?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think that it like goes to larger issues of like citizenship and like the relationship between citizen and government and those kinds of things. But yeah,
It does if they're being responsible, but if they're just going to print at will, then
yeah.
why tax you? So, anyways, okay, Ms. Wald, where will you be this week?
I am going to be on the War Room newsletter and hot take of the day with a look at a previous time when the Suez Canal was closed and what the deal was with that. And I will also be on investing.com, probably with an OPEC preview because it is that time of the month again, OPEC time. OPEC meeting time. And everyone can follow me on Twitter where I'll probably be deep in the OPEC
And what day is the meeting?
cave. I think it's Thursday. I think they have the JTC meeting today. I think they have the JMMC tomorrow. And I think Thursday is the OPEC Plus meeting.
Okay.
I think.
All right. War Room newsletter, Text on Guest podcast. We'll be there. Feed the Dragon. I actually be back live here on the Twitterverse in about 30 minutes with Feed the Dragon. And Don't Let the Facts. And I think that's it. So
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
all right,
Thanks
bye,
to
everyone.
everyone who participated.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, next week, real quick. Periscope is RIP tomorrow. And so we will be either on YouTube. This is on YouTube now, so we'll either be on YouTube, we can send that link out in advance, or as soon as they give us the API to patch back into Twitter's new platform, we'll be back here. But we'll be live next
Okay.
week. Not sure exactly where, and we'll figure that out. Hopefully, they'll give us a connection to get right into Twitter instead of going through Periscope, which is where we're right now. So, anyways, we'll be back next week, regardless, somewhere, and we'll let you know.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.